Legend of Grimrock is the kind of PC game that hasn't been around since the early 90s. It's a party-based dungeon crawler where you and your adventurers all share the same perspective, or a communal eye. It's the sort of game that you'll look at and go, how could this possibly be fun? But then after 5 minutes, you're pulled into this world of traps and puzzles and adventure at every turn.
Developer Almost Human is calling this a spiritual successor to games like Dungeon Master, where the thrill lies in delving deeper and deeper through the levels of a dungeon, dodging traps, solving riddles, and defeating monsters.
The story is simple, but it doesn't need to be any more complex. You're prisoners, criminals cast into the pit at the top of a mountain, upon which your crimes are immediately absolved. If you can somehow make it to an exit and walk free, good on you.
You can start with a prefab party or create your own individual characters, but I always enjoy customizing my heroes, so I'd recommend you do the same. You can choose from a human, minotaur, insectoid, and lizard, as well as classes of fighter, mage, and rogue. The obvious choice is 2 warriors up front to soak up the damage with ranged fighters at the back, but I liked that you could also create a party full of wizards if you wanted a bit of challenge.
Or punishment.
Yeah. You can also play with old school mode enabled, which means that the game doesn't auto-map the dungeon for you, so you have to get out some grid paper and a pen and do that yourself.
And you do really rely on that map too. Although I found if you just leave torches lying around the place, it kind of marks where you've been.
Bit of Hansel and Gretel method there.
Movement is made in a grid-like fashion, step by step, forwards, backwards, turning and strafing. And there's an odd kind of momentum that you have as you move, which takes a bit of getting used to. But for a game made by just 4 guys, the dungeon looks great, doesn't it? Some nice eerie lighting effects. Good wall detail.
Oh yeah, I love that moss there. You'll want to equip a torch too though, to feel a bit more confident exploring those dark hallways. There's a real atmosphere to this, and I've got to say, Barjo, I found it pretty spooky. It almost reminded me of Amnesia a bit, and that every time you turn a corner you expect a monster to be there. And there's not. And then there is. Ah!
Yeah, you can really cut that tension with a knife, and I think it's because you're so vulnerable, and that's why it's so thrilling. Also, every enemy is evil in some way, and they're utterly terrifying. Even though they're stuck to this grid, they're still really scary.
Even the snails. They look so cute, and then they have these horrible teeth.
I like the way they explode, though.
Yeah, they kind of like turn into confetti.
Yeah.
I found that luring enemies around in circles was a pretty effective way of taking them down, because you can get your hits in and then move before they can even get a sniff. You know, it works so long as you haven't been hemmed in.
Yes, I made good use of those doors with chains and levers.
Yeah, it's a good thing most monsters don't know how to open doors. But how'd you find the combat mechanics? Suitably old school and fiddly?
From the look of this game, I expected it to be turn-based, but it's not. It's real-time, and I was not expecting the stress of managing my party in real time. You have to right-click on the individual icons of the weapons under each character portrait to attack. And if your archer runs out of arrows, then you've got to open his inventory and equip more, all in real time while you're getting eaten alive. The hardest thing, though, is casting spells. Here you have to open your spell book, click a combination of runes, all by memory, and then click again to cast. Every second is so precious, it's quite stressful.
Yeah, the warriors have it easy, don't they? Just click and wait for the cooldown. But I suppose you can kind of justify the casting of spells in your own imagination if you think of that spellcaster trying to calm her mind and recant these complex spells in the heat of battle. By comparison, you know, a guy with a sword doesn't really have to think too hard.
I just wish it would at least remember the last one you cast. It would have been nice to have some more hotkeys, though. I've got this whole keyboard full of buttons. Just use more of them.
No, but that's not the point. I mean, mages have some pretty powerful spells, so it's good that you can't just spam damage with them as easily as a guy swinging an axe. You can also crush plants in a mortar and pestle to make potions. But the recipes you'll mostly need to figure out for yourself.
I like that sometimes when you sleep to regain a bit of health, you're left with this mysterious message from someone who's trapped in the dungeon below you. You You find notes from them left about the place too.
I was quite surprised I was getting lured into a story here, trying to make sense of this horrendous dungeon and wondering what happened to all the adventurers who went before me.
Well, let's talk about the traps and puzzles, because they're a big part to why this game works. If you keep a keen eye on the walls you're passing, you'll sometimes spot small markings that are switches for secret doors or triggers to make something happen. There are lots of pits that open up and grates that slam shut, and magical warp fields that teleport you somewhere. There are also pressure pads which you can place items on or just trigger yourself. Some of the traps incorporate all of these, which make for some pretty brain-hurty puzzles, and you'll feel genuinely stuck.
You'll often come across riddles written on walls as clues, but I admit I use the internet to get past 1 or 2 points.
It made me think what it was like back before the internet, when we had to look in magazines and talk to friends to find solutions to these problems, or just give up.
Yeah, I mean, it's that kind of old school game that they were trying to recreate, so I guess maybe it's just up to the player to walk away, sleep on it, and then try another solution the next day.
Yeah, and they are all logical solutions, and very, very clever, so you feel a bit stupid once you've shown the solution. Have modern games gone too easy on us, Hex? Have we become soft gamers?
Well, maybe. I think that's why Grimrock is gaining so much popularity, because it offers a tougher than usual nut to crack. But, I really enjoyed this, Barjo. Exploring that mysterious dungeon was just so addictive.
Yeah, it's ironic that such an old school game feels so new and different. I had a great time. I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I'm gonna give it 8 as well.
Now, regular viewers may remember the Tiny Power animations from last year.
Well, now they're back, this time with an episodic drama set in an indie game studio. Here's episode 1.
Hans Booby!